show you how I made this old Keihin carburetor look like this brand new one by cleaning it thoroughly, rebuilding it completely, and even adjusting the float height so that you never have to touch this thing again. I am elbows deep in this Honda Dream restoration right now. I'm trying to get this thing running. It has not been easy, but that's not what this video is about. So this is the carburetor for my 1963 Honda Dream. This is kind of a weird looking carburetor because there's no screws on the bottom. All it has is this little latch thing to hold the bowl on. But this video is universal for any carburetor. Starting with the left and working to the right, this is the stuff you will need. You're going to need a Chem Dip or other brand carburetor parts cleaner. Next, you're going to use some carburetor spray cleaner to spray through all the jets after you pull it out of this dip. You might need a brass brush to clean some of the stubborn stuff off. This is better than using steel because steel will scratch your aluminum carburetor. So use a brass brush. And finally, we're not just cleaning this thing, we are rebuilding it, which means we're installing all new gaskets, seals, jets, everything's going to be brand new so that you never have to mess with this thing again. Finally, this one's kind of optional, but you're going to want some compressed air to spray through all of the little passageways and orifices after everything's done, just to make sure they're all clear of any debris or leftover cleaner or anything like that. First thing to do is disassemble it. We're going to pull out the floats. Sometimes they're plastic. On older bikes like this one, it's brass. And then the little needle comes out under the float. This is what stops the flow of gas after the bowl is filled. And you always want to check your needles to see what the seat looks like. If it's worn down, then it will leak gas and you're going to want to replace it. Next, you're going to want to remove the jets. The jets are where the fuel flows through to get into your engine. And then the idle jet will be removed next with a little flathead screwdriver. Pop, comes right out. And then also these old hoses, want to pull those off and definitely replace those as well. Man, these old hoses are always giving me trouble. There we go, away with the old hose. Then see if this little seal will come out. This is the intake manifold seal. This one's also dry and cracking, so that would not have sealed. And then there's also going to be an air screw or a fuel screw. And the way to tell which one's which is if it is on the air filter side of the carburetor, which is this side, then it's the air screw and it adjusts the air mixture. If it's on the engine side of the carburetor like this one, then it's the fuel adjustment screw and it actually adjusts the amount of fuel going into the carburetor. So let's go ahead and pull that guy out next. And that's an 8mm. And there's the needle seat. I will remove the idle adjustment screw, which is this one right here. And then there's also some other screw, which I honestly don't know what this one's for. Oh, never mind. Now I do. That inside there is the air jet. I'm gonna pull it out. There it is. Looks like a little main jet, to be honest. And that is everything removed from the carburetor. And now it's time to load up the carburetor and bowl into this Chem Dip cleaning solution. And there we go. We'll drop it in and let it soak for about 15 to 30 minutes. Now we're going to open up the carburetor rebuild kit, and it says what is in it right on the back. You want to make sure that it's the right model or the right one for your bike. Always want to make sure to compare the parts just to make sure they're correct. Same exact size as the old one. Perfect. Get a new spring on there. Oh yeah, it's going to be a nice rebuild. And there's the new float needle versus the old one. You can see the new one is a lot more pointed tip. We're going to reuse the old float. Sometimes these floats can go bad if they get little holes in them and fill up with gas, so always do a little shake. I don't hear any gas in there, so this one should be good to go. And here's the new idle jet. It has a number 35 on it. This one also says 35, so that's good. And then it came with the new main jet as well, but I don't think it's the right size. This one says 92 on it, and the stock one that was in there is 105. So that's why you always check, guys. You can see it's not clogged up. So I'm going to reuse the old main jet. So there we go. Here's all the parts that I'm going to be reusing. Okay, now for this next part, you're going to wear some gloves because this stuff is nasty. I was hoping it would shine up the outside a bit more, but that's where the brass brush comes in. Okay, now that it's all brushed, it's going back in the sauce. One more bath. And I'm gonna do the same exact thing with the rest of the carburetor. Well, that's definitely a 65-year-old gasket, but I got it out of there. Back in the sauce it goes for one more bath. Bye-bye. It's the next day. I decided to just leave the carburetor in the soup all night because it really wasn't giving me the results I need. So hopefully now they look good. I'd say that's what I was looking for. It looks pretty dang clean now. Just look how clean that is. That looks so much better than it did at first. I'm going to use this spray carb cleaner through each individual little passageway, jet, all that stuff. The main fuel inlet, this is an important one. Air jet holes. There we go. Now it is all sprayed through. I'm going to use my compressed air with a little rubber nozzle to spray some air through each passageway and just really make sure everything's clear. Oh yeah, that one's clear now. We are now ready to rebuild this carburetor. For this step, you want to make sure everything is totally clean. Your work surface is clean, your hands are clean, you have gloves on. So I'm going to start out by installing the jets again. First, the main jet. These don't need to be very tight, just seated. Perfect. Next, the idle jet, pilot jet, or slow jet, whatever you want to call it. Also, make sure the end of your screwdriver is clean when you do this, because if it's not, it can clog up that jet. Just to be safe though, next the idle control screw goes in, about like that. And then the mixture screw, again, make sure your spring's on there or else it'll fall out. Now this one needs a special kind of adjustment. To do that, we first need to lightly seat the fuel screw and then refer to your service manual to see what the default position of this mixture screw is. The opening of the mixture screw should be 1.5 turns out. We're going to go half a turn, 1 turn, 1.5 turns out. That is the default spec. Okay, the air jet is installed. That's lightly seated as well. Little compressed air. Then there's that little cap that goes over it. Now we can go ahead and reinstall the float needle seat. Make sure you have the correct gasket washer under there, otherwise gas will leak by and not be good. And then that little float needle goes in, and then the floats go in, and we will adjust these in a second. A pin in there. Now, to adjust the float, you're either going to need a simple ruler or a micrometer, like I have, depending on how precise you want to be. Just place the carburetor upside down and measure the distance from the bottom of the main jet to the float. The distance should be 7 to 8 millimeters. My bike is kind of weird. Usually you measure from the gasket surface to the top of the float. just like this picture shows. My measurement is 10.7 millimeters. It's very easy to adjust. All you have to do is bend this little tab down a little bit or up, depending on what your measurement was. So I'm going to take a small flathead screwdriver and just pry it ever so slightly. So now let's put it back in and recheck the measurement. 7.8 millimeters. The spec is between 7 and 8, so we are in spec. We're gonna get the new seal, and then this round O-ring goes on the intake side right here. And blow them out with compressed air one last time if you want, because remember, we don't want to have to do this again. Then let's close it up. And then you'll either screw your bottom bowl back on, or in this weird case here, gonna use this little steel bracket to hold it in place. And I put it on backwards. There it is. And that's it. Now your carburetor is fully rebuilt, fully adjusted, and fully cleaned. The last thing to do is get it back on the bike. Here is the throttle slide and throttle slide needle that I've been talking about. It's still attached to the bike via the throttle cable, so now it's time to change that, just like that. So there's the spring, the throttle needle, and the throttle slide. Interestingly enough, this throttle needle is adjusted to second to the bottom notch, which means they wanted more fuel. I'm guessing they were trying to get some more power out of this thing, and they probably had an aftermarket air filter on it. So there's that seal up there. My rebuild kit came with a new one with some carb cleaner. Sorry, didn't mean to spray you guys there. Alright, that's better. We're going to use my new throttle needle that came with the rebuild kit. Make sure it's the same size and taper. Looks like it is exactly the same, so that's good. I'm going to take my new C-clip that the kit came with and put it on the needle right in the center position. We can always adjust this later if we need to. And get the new needle in place, just drop it right down the middle. Then this little bracket just drops right in on top of the needle to hold it in place. Bring back in, and let's get this back to the bike. The new gasket goes on top. I'm gonna get as much extra cable slack as you can. You're gonna need it. And there we go. That's all there is to do there. Now we're gonna reinstall the carburetor. First, we can put the throttle slide into it, like that. We can give it a little test. Let's see, it's working. On a lot of bikes, there's a rubber intake boot that the carb just goes into, but not this bike. This one actually has an intake manifold that the carburetor gets tightened onto. And you just tighten it up. That's it. Now you just have to put a fuel line on. Always make sure to use an inline fuel filter like this. That'll prevent you from having to clean your carburetor in the future. And then also make sure to get a new air filter on the back of there and you're ready to ride. And that's about it, guys. Now you know how to fully clean and rebuild a carburetor. I've done this like 100 times, so I'm just here to share my knowledge with you guys. Here, have some knowledge. Here's some more knowledge. So hopefully you guys gained some of that knowledge in this video. And if you want to see this baby start up for the first time, make sure you hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so you don't miss out on that video coming very soon. Hit that like button if you learned something. Comment down below with any tips I might have missed. And I will see you guys next time. Peace.